Welcome to Chat with Nomads, where we uncover travel insights, business advice, adventure stories, and lifestyle tips with world travelers and digital nomads. Here is your host, Rax, from nomadsunveiled.com.
Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Chat with Nomads. Today, very happy to have with us Jazmin from Travel to Blank. Hi Jazmin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here. I appreciate the invitation and I'm so excited to talk more about traveling.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for hopping on because I know you're quite busy packing and stuff as well. So let's start by having an introduction of yourself and maybe of Stevie as well, since he's not here, but you can kind of speak for him.
Yeah, I apologize for that. Steve is actually working. He do have a full-time job. So unfortunately, right now he just got called into a meeting. But I will tell you a little bit about us. So I'm Jazmin. I was born and raised in Ecuador. I have been traveling since full-time since 2015. Before that, I used to travel often, but not as a full-time job. I have visited about 70 countries around the world and over 200 destinations. Right now, we're based in Raleigh, North Carolina, where we have a house. Steve has his job. I have 2 dogs and 1 hedgehog. That's my base and my place to come always after a trip. And Steve, on the other hand, he was born and raised in Boston. We met in college and we got married after a month of knowing each other. We got engaged after a month of knowing each other and married a year after. And he loves coming with me on trips, but unfortunately right now he can only join during vacations or holidays or weekends. So
Okay, cool. Wow, got engaged after a month of knowing each other. That's very fast, right?
Yeah, it was crazy because my whole family was freaking out. I remember calling my mom and my dad and my cousins, and they were like, "What, are you crazy? Like your longest relationship is 2 months." And I'm like, "I know, but this is the one." And they're like, "No, this is not the one. Like, you need to not rush into it." And I was like, "When you know, you know." And we have been happily married for 8 years now, so it worked out for us.
That's nice. You have a dog and a cat, right?
I have 2 dogs and a hedgehog, and I had a cat. Well, I still have him, but right now he's living with my mother-in-law.
Yeah.
Just because my dog tried to eat him once, so we were like, "Oh."
Really? The dog tried to eat the cat? I thought that was just like a cartoon kind of thing.
Well, the thing is, all my animals are adopted. So when I adopted my dog, he was raised in a farm, so he kind of got a little wild, to say the least.
Got it.
So sometimes they were playing, and one day I just saw he's chasing him, trying to, more than play, and I was like, okay, this is too much. He's staying he's staying in Boston. I'm shipping him there, so I had to had him there. Unfortunately, I haven't seen him in a year.
And you have a hedgehog. That's also interesting.
Yes.
How is the experience like having a hedgehog? Because it's cute, but you can't really touch it or anything, right?
Yeah, I mean, I try not to touch him as much just because hedgehogs are not supposed to be in captivity. So it's not natural for them to be friendly to humans unless since they were born, they got used to that. So I adopted him because the person who had it before didn't want him anymore. He was going through a nasty divorce and he was like, either I take him here or I let him be free. And I was like, unfortunately, hedgehogs are not natural from North America, so the animal will die. So I got him, and I just make sure he has food, he has a clean cage and water, and I try not to play as much with him, just to not, with her, just not to put her that much pressure on her, just because she's not used to be touched, and it's just better just to let her be.
Got it. That's interesting. Yeah. Let's go back to the topic of traveling then. So what got you started traveling actually? Because you say you came from Ecuador and I think you went to the States to study, right? But I also know ever since young, you have already been traveling to the States and other parts of the world with your parents.
Yes. I remember my first trip was when I was 2 years old. I actually came to the United States. My parents took me to Disney. And my mom told me that I was so amazed by the plane that after that, I was always planning a trip. I was packing, and my cousin tells me the same. Like, I was packing my teddy bears in a backpack, and I was like, okay, where next? And my mom was like, nowhere. Like, what? So I remember always loving to plan a trip, to pack things, to get somewhere new. My mom and my dad, they are not nature lovers in the same way that I am. Like, their trips were more to cities. I love more going to national parks, go camping, enjoying nature, like the outdoors. So I actually started doing that once I turned 18 and I went to college, and I was more exposed to that type of traveling experience. And I just loved it. With my mom, by the time I was 18, I have already been in Africa, Asia, Europe, North and South America. So I always developed that passion for traveling and get to discover new cultures. I remember when I went to China, I was there for 3 weeks. I barely spoke English at that time, and I don't speak Mandarin at all. So we went in Shanghai, and my mom was like, okay, I'm tired. Like, it has been a long trip. I'm going to sleep here. And we only had 2 days in Shanghai because we were on a bigger tour. And I was like, what? I was like, oh no, I'm out. And I was 16 years old. I left the hotel, took the first bus, got lost in the middle of Shanghai where I could barely understand anything what's going on. And I was like, okay, I'm just taking photos and visiting temples and just trying different food and everything. And I got back to the hotel around midnight, and my mom was hysterical because we didn't have cell phones in the same way that we had right now.
Yeah.
So my mom was like, I have been worried all day. Like, where were you? I was like, oh, I just got lost and I just didn't know how to come back, but I made it. And she's like, you're crazy. You have that wanderlust on you that it's just going to get in trouble. And I was like, no, it's not. And I remember going back home, and I signed up for Mandarin classes. Unfortunately, I'm really bad for languages. So after one period, I was like, okay, this is not for me. But I remember always having that passion. When I went to Russia, I wanted to go back for school to Russia. When I went to Egypt, I wanted to stay there for a month. And my mom was like, like, you have a life. You cannot build your life around traveling. And I was like, one day I'm going to prove you wrong. And little by little, I think I am.
That's
So,
nice. Yeah. I think a lot of world travelers always have a tiny itch about languages. Like, it's the same for me. Wherever I go to a country, I always will be like, I should actually learn the language. But obviously, like you say, learning languages are not exactly that easy. So then when it comes to the hard work, you're like, oh shit, man, this is like a bit difficult. But there's always the
yeah.
itch to want to be able to speak the local language so you can kind of connect better with the culture and the society there, right?
Exactly. And I feel like best connection that you can have in a city is by letting people express their emotions on their own language. Just because you get a more authentic and more realistic, and they're using actual words that mean something to them, instead of when you're trying to translate something that you might not know how to say something, so you use similar words but do not represent the same. It's not as impactful as a word that you would have said if you knew that word. So my favorite thing is about learning a little bit of the language. Of course, if I go to China again or Russia, I would not be able to understand anything. But for instance, when I go to Italy, that is similar to Spanish, I tried to kind of understand a little bit more of what they're saying. And a way that I do that, like I prepare my ears for that, is watching TV shows in Italian. So my ear gets used to it before I go to Italy, because even though they're similar words, it's a different language and it's a different accent. So you need to get used to that rhythm, to that accent. So that's a tip that I can give people. If you have a similarity language with a country you're going to visit and you want to being able to understand more, practice before going to that destination by watching movies and TV shows on that language and having subtitles. So that helps you make a full circle and connected.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's true that even for me, like when I first came into South America from Europe, and I had already learned Spanish. My Spanish is not great, but I had some basic knowledge of it. But when I first got into Colombia after 10 years from learning Spanish, and I just hear them speaking Spanish directly, it wasn't that easy to get used to. Even though I was in Madrid right before that, but still, there's a difference in the change. But I realized as you stay longer in a certain place and you hear the same language over and over again, that makes it way easier. You kind of get into the flow of it. And now I
Yeah.
think like Spanish is quite common for me to listen to, right? Yeah. And also I can definitely understand the part where you were saying when people are expressing in their local language, that is more authentic and you get the real vibe. Because just now you were saying how your mom was saying you must be crazy when you came back, right? But when I hear you say that, I assume she's saying to you in Spanish rather than English.
Yeah.
I can imagine the Spanish accent of the Latino accent of, oh, you must be crazy. And then it's a very different vibe from when you say it in English.
It is, and it has I mean, language has a lot of power and a lot, like, every word, every accent that you use it, the way you express yourself. I feel it's more impactful when you get it from the locals in their own language than when they are trying to just talk to you in their language. So, in your language. So to me, it's like, if possible, try. I mean, there's cases that it's just not gonna be possible when your language is totally different. Don't even bother. There's no way you're gonna understand anything they're saying. I just say, to me, that's one of my favorite thing about speaking Spanish, is that I can go to so many different countries and being able to communicate and build a stronger relationship. I feel,
Yeah.
just because, I mean, you can build a stronger relationship just by talking any language, but I feel like when you speak the same language, it's a plus. I don't know. It gives an added value. I don't know how to explain it, but it just
Yes.
happens.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I picked up Spanish first, because I kind of realized that knowing Spanish covers at least 30% of the world, or at least the whole Latin America. You can go around with that language, right?
Yeah.
And the bad thing is just that then now I'm always picking language based on practicality instead, because then I'll be like thinking, for example, like my next one will probably be like French, because that will cover a big part of Africa, and of course France.
Yeah. I mean, French is a language that I tried learning for the longest time, all of high school and 3 years after that, and I just cannot. The accents, like
Yeah.
the things with the throat, I just cannot do. And I was like, it sucks, because my mom, she used to live in France since she was little, so she does speak French pretty well, and she would communicate in French with my aunts in front of me and my cousins, so we didn't understand what they were talking about. And now I go back to her and it's like, why would you do that to me? Like, that was just not nice. Like, right now I could have speak 3 languages, and now I just speak 2 because of you.
They must be talking about bad things that they don't want you guys to understand.
I guess. My cousin and I, we developed our own language. We were just saying whatever just to get back to them, but
That's
crazy.
interesting. Cool. So this is very interesting, because I can hear from you, and this is something that I think you mentioned a lot on your blog and on your social media, is the idea of diversity in travel, right? Or diversity among people. And I understand both you and Stevie come from quite a mixed ethnic background, right? If
Yeah.
I'm not wrong, I had to write this down because you also.
Yeah, don't worry.
I assume you are the Arab Italian descent Latina,
Yeah.
and he's actually an American Jew, right? So
Yeah.
I can see that. Well, I mean, like, ethnic diversity is everywhere, but as I always say, different people have different focus on certain stuff. So when you travel, you're also looking at different things, right? Like a person who likes food looks more into food. A person who likes horses will look more into horses. But obviously, this seems to be an area that's quite close to both of you. So when you travel, is there any particular things you see or do that ties in with this portion?
Yeah, I mean, diversity is a big word. It's a broad word.
Yep.
That means so many things. And I was invited to a conference that I'm going to give next week to talk with the Tourism Board of North Carolina is having this big conference, and they're invited me to talk about diversity. And one of the things that I always say about diversity is it's not just about race. It's not just about being white, black, Latino, or Asian descent. It's also about being religious. Like, if you're Jewish, if you're Muslim, if you're Catholic, if you are Mormon, diversity also includes sizes. It's about being a bigger size or a small size. And diversity, it's just, it entitles so much, such a powerful word that contains so much meaning to it. So for me, at least, what I like doing when I'm traveling is visiting, depending on where we go, of course. There's destinations that you can do it more than other destinations. But one of the things that I like doing is visiting Shoah memorials, Holocaust memorials, just because for me, as someone who's married to a Jew and I didn't know much about Judaism and what the Holocaust was, besides reading on the books when I was in high school, but actually seeing from a Jewish perspective, it changed my life. It changed my life about how important it is to embrace differences in us and remember that even though we might be different, we are all the same. We're humans. And hate towards what you don't know or hate towards someone that looks different than you can end in something as awful as the Holocaust. So me personally, I always try to visit, either a memorial or a Jewish museum or a statue or whatever it is, just as a reminder that, we need to embrace that within travel. In my way, it might be, I choose something Jewish just because I'm not part of that community in the same way, because I'm still not a convert. I'm still in my process, but it's something that it really speaks to me. And in the other things, as being a Latina and being Italian and Arab, one of the things that I have encountered talking to people that look more like the stereotype of those communities is that I got lucky enough that I do not look like that. So I do not receive the same amount of racism towards me. To me, it's not about being lucky. Like, I wish I could look more Latina because I'm proud of my heritage. I wish I could look more Arab or or more Italian because that's who I am. Like, that's part of who I am. So to me, I don't see it as being lucky. I see it as it is the way it is. But it has helped me to understand that not because you do not embrace something, like you do not experience something, that means that it's not happening. Like, for the longest time, I thought that there was no racism towards Latinas in the United States because I didn't experience it myself. But it was not until I moved to the South when people heard my accent, and then I start seeing that maybe they are not racist when they see me, but they are racist when they hear me talk. Then I was like, okay, so racism is here. It's not unexistent. So it's just making it more clear that we do have to fight these stereotypes, and we do need to say we are different, but at the same time, we are all the same. We're humans. We all suffer. We all have joys. We are healthy. We're sick. Our appearances might look different, but at the end, we're the same, and it needs to be respected and it needs to be embraced because we can bring so much to the table. Regardless of where we come. Actually, in fact, because we come from different places, we can bring more to the table. So that's something that I try to remember while I'm traveling and to not be afraid. And for instance, for my husband and I, one of the things that we try to do is that he wears his kippah. So a kippah is the little hat that Jews wear above their head. In a lot of places, it's not safe to do so. And with my husband, we made a commitment that we were going to start wearing, he was going to start wearing it because it was important to have representation. It's important to show people that we are here and we're here to stay, and you're not going to bully us away from this. And that's the same thing with other people that are Black or are Asian or are Latinos, that they need to start feeling, they need to start making a presence. And I know it's hard because some people are afraid of their safety. And I understand where those fears come from, but it is important to make a stand, and it is important to show that we are there. And for that, you need to represent. You need to be in those locations. Of course, be always aware, but it is important to take a stand because I think like right now is the moment. Right now, people are realizing that racism is an issue, that a lot of people are getting hurt by it, and it's a good momentum to not let it go. And within travel, it is important because I have heard awful stories that have happened to some of my Black friends in Europe that because of their color of skin, they thought they were prostitutes. It's insane. So it is important to make ourselves being more seen. So we start a change. And we all need to be part of it. We cannot just let on the people that are racist to change. They are not going to change. We need to make them change. We need them to understand that we're here and that we're not going away, and that they need to respect us, that we have the same amount of money to spend in travel like they do, that we have the same right to enjoy nature like they do, and just putting ourselves there. It's not easy, but it's needed.
Got it. I love this because I do share the same sentiments in that, and I believe in some sense travel is one of the things that I think helps people open up their minds, because you get exposure to different culture, and that is how you really realize that what you perceive as the normal or the judgments that you might have that came from external influences are not always true. Only when you meet a friend who is, I don't know, maybe an Arab or a Muslim or a black or a white, that is when this perception or judgments get crushed, right? Because you will realize that all the stereotypes are actually not totally true and applicable to everyone. Every human is still unique to himself and herself. I mean, yes, we identify ourselves with our ethnic, with our religion and stuff, but each of us are still human and we have our own characteristics that might not be tied to any of these other labels that we hold.
Exactly. And the thing that I always say, there's good people and bad people, regardless of their race, their religion, their country of origin, their sex, their sexual orientation, their gender. So you cannot judge a whole community for one encounter that you have had with someone that might not be the greatest person. We cannot just make it like everyone is like that.
Yeah.
Everyone is different. And I invite people to be more open and to actually learn from other people and respect. And the best way to start opening your mind is by learning how to respect others, not trying them to convince them that their ways are wrong and your way is right, but trying to understand why they think that way and respecting. Even if you don't agree with it, respect that, because respect is the base for a good relationship. It's the base for succeed. It's the base for becoming more humans even.
Yeah, we can be friends and we can be talking about a certain topic and the views can be different, but it's really a more of, apart from respect, I also think it's a bit of empathy, whereby you understand where the other person is coming from or how his or her background, experiences, culture actually can lead to a certain different conclusion than what yours have led you to, right? And it's just normal for all of us to have all these very different outlooks and perspective, and that is actually what makes all of us special, to have different point of views of it.
I mean, I'm going to give you a quick example of something that happened to me personally. I remember I was talking to one of my friends, she's Black, and she was telling me, because growing up, I didn't have that much encounter with the Black community. So it wasn't until I moved to the United States, especially to Raleigh, North Carolina, where I had more contact with the Black community. So anyway, so one of the things that she told me while we were talking is that she hated when people touch her hair. And I could not understand that. I was like, why are you saying that people touch your hair? No one touches mine. And she's like, yeah, because you're not Black. I was like, yeah, that's stupid. Why would someone touch your hair? And she's like, because my hair is different. I'm like, yes, I can see that, but why would someone reach out to your hair? That's just so unrespectful and so weird and odd and awkward. And she's like, exactly. And I honestly thought that that was only her experience. So I got into this mission of actually going out whenever I was talking to someone of color and ask her if that was her experience. I know it was uncomfortable, maybe even rude sometimes, but I really wanted to know if it was true or not. And that's when you need to go out of your comfort zone. And if you really want to understand where someone is coming from, actually putting yourself in their shoes and going out and try to find out, if it's a real experience or not, in the sense of if racism is real or not, if you haven't experienced it. So I went out, not like literally going out looking for Black people, but like every time I went out and I saw someone of color and we were talking, I was like, I'm so sorry to bother you, but I have a quick question for you. Is this true? People try touching your hair. I'm asking you out of a place of ignorance, not to offend you, because I want to know. And she's like, yes, yes, yes. And I kept getting yeses and yeses and yeses and yeses. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is something that everyone experiences. Everyone that I have talked to that is Black have experienced that. And they tell me that since they are little until now that they might be like 60, they were like, we are fed up. Like, we're tired. We're done. Respect my space. Like, I don't go and touch other people's hairs. And that was a wake-up call for me to realize that there's a lot of things going on And you cannot say, oh, they're overreacting, they're exaggerating, if you don't know where they come from. So imagine if you were, since you were little, someone was touching your hair. Of course, you're going to fed up by the time you're 15. And of course, you're going to have complaints, you're going to have frustrated, and you're going to be like, stop. Like, you're going to be more reluctant to be like, stop touching me, than someone that have never been touched with their hair before. So it is important to listen to the other person and their stories, and trying to see where they come from and why they are reacting or they are acting the way they are acting, to have more empathy and to be nicer to people that are around you, even if they do not look like you.
Yeah, this is great. I think even what you are saying now is a matter of awareness, right? It's actually the thought process of knowing that you should be listening and thinking it in this particular way. That's the general concept. Sometimes it's so invisible because it's like a middle layer of perception or kind of mentality of thinking. So people subconsciously might be saying, oh yeah, I don't know what she's talking about. It doesn't even make sense, right? But it's really about the instant when you hear it and you go towards the mode of, hey, let me listen to this and not judge that she's wrong or whatever. Let's listen to the story and really see where she's coming from first, before saying that, just dismissing it as if it's a crazy experience or one-off thing to a certain person. And I think that conscious thinking of being able to put in effort to understand and listen and not judge at the first jump is so important.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, it's part of traveling. And I feel like travel does that to you, because you are the stranger wherever you go. Like, let's say when I went to China, I remember that the first day, a lot of people were looking the same to me, because I wasn't, accustomed to the location. Like, I felt like, oh, people do look the same. But by the time I was there for like, 10 days, I was more accustomed to see people, and I start seeing people different. And the same thing happened to me when I went to Norway for the first time. Everyone was northern Norway, people were super white. And I was like, I'm not used to see a lot of white people. Well, now that I live in the United States, it's a different story. But growing up in Ecuador, I was like, oh, because you're not used to it. And it's okay. The problem is people think that that's racist. And that's part of being racist. But the only way you can fight that back is by acknowledging that that is happening and taking a stand to be aware of that and fight that back. By how? Being like, okay, so I need to, if this is happening to me, it's because I'm not involved too much within different communities. So I need to get out of my own community and try to interact with different people. So my mind keeps expanding. So when you leave your country, your comfort zone, your city, to go somewhere else, you're taking that first step. And because you are the different one, you start feeling what other people felt you were doing when they were coming to you. So that's what I love about traveling, is that it puts you out of your comfort zone. It pushes you away. It makes you more aware of things that you say, of things that you do, the way you behave. And to me, that's priceless. That's an experience that cannot be taught in a university. It cannot be taught at home in the same way. It needs to be experienced by going out of your comfort zone.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. And the other interesting thing that's probably good to hear your experience on is because you and Stephen actually come from quite different backgrounds, right? And I always realize that whenever I travel or whenever I talk to someone with a more different background in terms of all sorts of range, it can be ethnicity, occupation, even, or religion, the way they approach or see certain things are different. And it's very interesting when I travel with them because I get exposed to a very different and new perspective of how they see it. So with you and your husband being from also coming from very different backgrounds, do you feel like when you travel with him, you also learn more and see more compared to when you are traveling alone?
I do. And it's because we travel different. I would say when I travel alone, I do whatever I want. Whatever I feel I want to do, I do. When I travel with him, there's things that we try to keep. Like, for instance, he doesn't eat pork. He keeps kosher, so he doesn't. I mean, I do too. Pork, shrimp, like seafood and things like that. He doesn't eat cheese with meat. So, well, all what kosher means, no? When I'm alone, I try not to, but if I see a lobster roll, I might be weak and I might be like, okay, just one. With him, I wouldn't do it out of respect. So yes, it's a different experience. And I feel like the thing is this, when you travel with different people, even if you are all in the same family and you have the same background and everything, we have different interests.
Yep.
And the best way to go on a trip with with a bunch of people is to compromise. Okay, so today we do this that you like, and then in the afternoon I do this that I like, and tomorrow we do something that, or something that like happens a lot. It's say like we each are gonna get our one afternoon we get free from each other, and we go and do whatever we want to do because we might need more time to explore something that we really want to do that no one else wants to do or whatever. So it's just trying to, as I said, to be respectful to the other person or the other people that you're traveling with, and trying to be open-minded and let their difference not pull you apart, but get you together and enrich your travel experience.
That's cool.
What I would
That's
say.
cool. Yep, that makes sense. And one more question on this diversity topic.
Yeah, of course.
Just now you were talking about standing up and representing, right? But sometimes it can be dangerous, or sometimes you actually get bad treatments because of like trying to represent, right? And what are some of the tips that you guys would recommend if you are staying strong and doing that, but you are facing negative forces? What are some ways to, or mentality or mindset even, to counteract this?
I mean, I would say be smart and be careful. I mean, it's not easy to take a stand, and I don't want anyone's life to be in danger. And unfortunately, against racism, there's a lot of your life could be in danger. I'm gonna give you an example of what we did. So, out of ignorance, for real, when we went to Norway, we were always staying in the Arab area just because it was cheaper. We didn't know that for a Jew, like a person that actually wears, I don't know how to say that in English, but like Jewish stuff, it could be danger for their life. We didn't know that. So Steve was wearing his kippah, and we got lucky enough that we didn't encounter any type of bad treatment or even violence. But when we were talking to a rabbi from Norway, from Oslo, he was like, "Oh no, you have been lucky. The 3 times that you have come here, that you have stayed there, and you have been wearing your kippahs and your tzitzis, and you have been lucky. I have to literally dress up to go to that area because it's really dangerous." So I always say, like, be smart, do your research. You might be able to create representation by going to a particular destination, but avoiding some neighborhoods or sectors. Trying to be somewhere where there's a lot of people. Just try to be smart. Like, I cannot tell you exactly what to do because it also depends on the reason why you're going there. If you're going for tourism, or you're going for work, or you're going to visit a family member, it's a different experience to go to Norway as someone Black, as someone Jewish, as someone Arab, as someone Latino. So it's really complex. But what I would do is like try to do research of a place that you want to go and see all the people that look like you or that represent your community, and go and ask questions. Like on Instagram, it's really easy to connect with people and ask questions and ask, like, how was your experience there? What do you recommend me doing? Do you wear your kippah everywhere? Well, if you're Black, your color of skin, you cannot hide. So like, do you feel safe your entire trip while you were in this particular destination? And if they tell you that, and you get all this information, then you can make safe decisions and smart decisions. And above everything, what I always say is ask more than one person, because someone might got lucky. Someone might got in a good area that you might not be staying at. So ask a bunch of people and always do research. And I always say, do not be afraid of visiting a place unless literally your life would be completely dangerous. So it's just like what makes sense to you and how you feel safer. And above everything, do not put your life in risk. It's just not worth it yet. It's just, we need to do it little by little until it becomes more safer to go other places.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. It's always step by step, right? So let's move on to the other topic that you guys also touch on, which is sustainability in tourism, right? Because I was saying tourism has always been booming for the last few years before COVID, right? But we have also seen that tourism have started to kind of destroy environments and also disrupt some of the local communities in terms of things like housing rentals and Airbnb has caused property to increase and those kind of stuff, right? So when you guys look into sustainable tourism, which area do you guys usually focus on in terms of your travel style?
So what we do is two things. So when we start a travel blog, we start creating walking guides, just because we think that the best way to explore a destination is actually by seeing the hidden gems that you can find, that you will only find if you're walking that place. Plus, you're not using a car, you're not using a lot of things that can contaminate the environment. So one of the things that I do recommend is if you go to a big city, walk the city or take public transportation. Even like try not to use as much of taxis or rent a car, just because that adds up eventually. Like imagine a city like New York, like Barcelona, with a lot of cars, and like it's just too much. When you can explore the city by food or by metro, no prob. It's even cheaper. You don't have to worry about parking, and you're also helping have less traffic, having CO emission and all the things. So that's one of the ways that we try to focus our sustainability. And another way that we try to focus our sustainability is to promote destinations that are not that well known yet. So I'm going to give you an example. You know, Nashville, Tennessee. Everyone knows Nashville, Tennessee. It's a beautiful city with a lot to offer. But only 30 minutes away is Franklin, Tennessee, which is another great city with a lot of history. It's one of the most pet-friendly cities in the world. So if you have a dog, you should go there with your dog, because your dog's going to have a blast. And we try to highlight those like secondary cities, if you want to call them like that. Like not the main city, not like LA, Miami, New York, which we also have guides for those, because of course people are traveling there as well. But we're also trying to give you options to go to more beautiful towns that still have a lot of history, magic, and a lot of amazing experiences that you can enjoy with your family and help their local community without overpopulating or overcrowding a different destination. So what you were saying happened in Barcelona. People didn't want to rent their apartments. They wanted to use them as Airbnbs because they were making more money, and you are hurting the local community. So there's other places around Barcelona that you can visit that are gorgeous, and then you can do a day trip to Barcelona if you really want to go, and in that way you help the local communities in the other towns, and you can still get the sense of going to Barcelona for a day or two without overpopulating that city.
Got it. For the walking part, for sure, I think that is definitely a better choice than trying to rent a car and everything and adding to both the traffic and the carbon emission, right? But I think the part regarding local communities is always, I've started to find it to be a bit of a tricky issue because it constantly moves. A local community that is not well known today, and you do want to drive traffic and attention to it, because tourism obviously do help a certain local community. But there's always that issue when by then it becomes famous and then it becomes overcrowded. Then you will have to look into like the other areas again. So I guess the tricky part about that is that it's always a constant change kind of thing, right? You want sufficient tourism to be there to help boost the community and economy, but you also want to make sure that it doesn't get overcrowded, because the last few years we have seen destinations that were supposed to be hidden gems now become crazy popular and become insane. Like Croatia is a good example. Places like Dubrovnik is now insanely touristic, right? Whereas I would say a few years ago, that is a nice getaway, right? And I think we are seeing a bit of the same thing in Montenegro by the coast. Places like Budva used to be nice coast and has a culture, but as it gets popular, resorts start coming in, and resorts come in, it kind of changes the place a bit.
And the thing is, it's always the only way to fight that back. It's always finding out new places. And that's one of our missions as Travel to Blank, is to always look for new places to visit, not only as a city, but also as in nature. We love going to national parks. We adore national parks. They are gorgeous. But we also like going to state parks, because the state parks, at least in the United States, they are not as visited as national parks. I mean, it depends on the state park, and there's other national parks that are not as famous as other ones. So I'm going to give you a quick example. Bryce Canyon or Canyonland or Arches National Park are really famous in the West Coast. but Capitol Reef is not. And it's because a lot of people don't know it exists, and it's gorgeous, it's beautiful. So by trying to help creating more, to impulse tourism, what you need to do is constantly be on the lookout for new destinations that you can write about, that you can take photos. And one of the things that I always say is, if you go to my Instagram, you're going to see a mixture in my photos between kind of like what Instagram should be, which is the person with their dress and their hat and looking at a beautiful background. And then you also see more real me and Steve, kind of like, we snap a shot and here's a photo of us. Because we want to remind people that traveling is also about the experience. It's also about enjoying the moment and not so much about the photos. So what we try to do with these new destinations is kind of find some Instagrammable spots within that small new destination, but also show the experience that we had in that destination, just to appeal to both people. But reminding people that traveling is not just Instagram, it's not just YouTube, it's not just Facebook, it's not just Twitter or Snapchat or whatever you use, TikTok to say, or whatever you use. It's about getting to know the culture, enjoying delicious food, and relaxing. Like, that's what travel is about. It's just enjoying that free time that you got for vacation, holidays, weekend, whatever it is, and make it a moment for you to grow as a person, around your family, around yourself, around your dogs, or whoever. So that's something that I tried doing. And that's, I feel like that's my giving to make tourism a little bit more sustainable. I still travel to all these big cities. In fact, I'm going to be going to Miami tonight. I don't think they need more tourism, but there's a lot of places, a lot of museums that people don't even know that exist. So it's trying to find those spots. Even like sometimes it's just trying to find a way that you can help take away from a overcrowded place to a non-overcrowded place. So it takes time and it takes effort, but it's worth doing it. And if traveling is your passion and your commitment to traveling is that it's sustainable and it stays, it's your duty to keep looking for these places.
That's true. It's a constant effort. And I really like how you are catering your content to both groups, right? Because like what you are saying, some people might really just be interested in the Instagrammable pictures, but posting that together with content of like real world experiences kind of exposes them to this other genre of real travel per se. And it's good in the sense that it's almost like a constant effort, right? It never ends. It's just repeatedly doing it and finding new places and trying to basically give attention to places that need the attention.
Exactly.
So for example, you still do guides on New York, right? But people who is going to New York and saw your guide on New York might see these other side towns that are 1 or 2 hours away, and now they know that and they might be going there instead. So I like the diversity that you are creating with your content in terms of that way, right? And that's it. Let's talk a bit about your travel blog then. Maybe this is a good place for you to tell us the story behind Travel to Blank. Like, why Travel to Blank?
Well, I'm gonna be straight honest with you. Travel to Blank was the only name we found available. I'm not gonna. There's not a specific reason for it, but the thing with Travel to Blank is when we got engaged. We had a year that we were engaged with Steve, and by the end of that year, my visa was expiring. I was as a student visa in the United States, so we decided to go on a road trip around the United States for 3 months. And if we didn't kill each other by camping and not showering every day and not having the food that you want each day, we were like, if we can overcome this, then we can overcome marriage. So we did it. We ended our road trip actually by getting married in Florida. The next day we flew back to Ecuador, where we were supposed to be living for always. And then in Ecuador, we had a hard time finding a job for Steve because he didn't speak Spanish. For me, it was even harder to find a job because I got used to make money in America, where you make a lot of money, versus in Ecuador that they wanted to pay me like literally what I was making in one day in America versus, for a whole month in Ecuador. So it was a little bit harder for me to adjust. So I was like, okay, so I already travel through your country. Now it's my time to show you mine. So we were traveling throughout Ecuador, every weekend that we could, when we were saving money, selling something, whatever. It's really cheap to travel through Ecuador, so it was doable. And then Steve started writing about his experience living in Ecuador, traveling in Ecuador as an American. And then he started generating traffic to his website, his personal website. And then he was like, oh, maybe we should start writing like a guide just for us to, remember, kind of a diary. And we were like, okay, let's do it. And then we were, okay, let's find a username. And then we were like, okay, travel to. And we couldn't find anything. And then we realized that the way we were traveling was depending on availability, prices, and mode of transportation. So we were like, travel to, I don't know, blank. And it's like, yeah, travel to blank. And then we look it up and it was available. And we're like, oh, we're set. Because we didn't know where were we going or anything. So we were like, you fill the blank. And that's how the name came. And then we just started working on it. When we moved to Europe for our master degree, we started traveling more and more around Europe and creating more content. And that's when we start creating the walking guides, because in Ecuador, we mostly did more road trips. But in Europe, you can walk all the cities. We started doing more walking guides and things like that. And it all just added up together. It wasn't that we were planning on it. It wasn't that we were looking for a niche to fill. It was just more the result of our lives.
Got it. That's interesting. I'm also curious to know your audience demographic because I mean, you guys are doing something that most blog probably don't do. That's what I'm assuming because I haven't seen it. You basically have the blog in both English and Spanish, right? So what's the mindset behind doing both? Because obviously it's additional stuff to do, right?
Our demographics are, the majority of our people come from the United States, Ecuador, Colombia, the UK, and Canada. And the reason why I do it in English and in Spanish is in English, just because that's the way we started doing it, because Steve was the one who was writing it and editing. Like I would do a draft and then he would make sure it was proper English and everything. And in Spanish, it was more because I wanted to share that with my people, with my community, invite Latinos and Hispanics in general to travel more and to go to all these places that they might not know. So it became more of a personal thing for me. It's just like showing them not just New York and Miami and LA, but showing them all these other places that they might not find content because it might not be written. Maybe they are, maybe it is, maybe it's not. I'm not going to say that I'm the only one who's writing in Spanish for all these locations, but not with my point of view, no, with what I offer, at least. So I was like, if the content is there, why not just translate it? I mean, it takes a little bit more of time, but it's not twice as the work because the content's already there. So it's just, I would say half the work.
But do you do anything differently in terms of like SEO and stuff? Because I assume that in terms of
Yes.
written, that's the way.
Yeah. I mean, it is like writing a new post, but it's already having that draft in English, if that makes sense. So, what it is cool for me is that I actually rank higher in my posts in Spanish than in English. So it's
For
worth the
sure.
work.
Yeah, I assume so because I mean the English blogs are probably still the most competitive
Yeah.
area to be in, right? And I think having both languages kind of makes sense. And if it complements each other, obviously, why not?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so how did the pandemic affect you guys then? Because you are full-time blogging, right? As I understand, but Stephen has another full-time job.
Yeah. I mean, the pandemic pretty much destroyed us. We did not get as much income as we were getting. Our traffic went down, like I would say 60%. It was awful. But at the same time, I was grateful that Steve had a different job and that we were not struggling like other people were in the tourism industry. Because even though blogging, it is an industry in its own, there were hotels and there were restaurants and there were airlines and there were, tour operators that were having it tougher because that was actually their full-time, job or whatever it is. So even though it was harder for us to go by, just knowing that we have that backup of Steve's job made us more doable to go through it. And also trying to share content to people. And what I did was I didn't focus so much on how much money I was making, but more about bringing all these places to people. Because I mean, at the beginning of the pandemic, right now it's not as much, but at the beginning of the pandemic, no one was thinking about traveling. People were at home with their kids, with work, with everything. Like there was a lot of stress in the environment, even that I thought, and I did that. It was like by my videos trying to take people at least for 1 minute out of their homes and to a new place. So I tried doing that on Twitter mostly every day, posting something, a new video of a new destination that I was going, and people were appreciating it a lot. Like on my personal Twitter, people were like, "Thank you." These 30 seconds, 40 seconds remind me that there's something cooler out there, and that I'm gonna get back to it at some point. And I feel like that's about the pandemic. It's like, it was a tough time. It is still tough, but we're just leaving that behind. And with the vaccines coming more available to everyone, it's just, it was an awful period. But I think that it also got us together more as humans. And it made us realize that it doesn't matter if you're in China or in the United States or in Ecuador or in Italy or in Germany. We were all facing one big threat all together, and we were all on this. So my intake from the pandemic was more of a humble one. It was more about being thankful that no one in my direct family died because of it. It was more valuing what I have, valuing my home, valuing my husband, my dogs, being able to spend time with my family and not being between suitcases. Even though I love it and I would not trade it for anything in the world, it made me realize the importance of having a home, of having, and by home, I don't mean a house, I mean having that support system that sometimes you take it for granted when you are traveling because there's so many exciting things going on that sometimes you even forget about calling home and being like, hey, how was your day? I don't know. To me, it was just a year that I learned a lot as a human. So I'm not going to say I'm thankful for the pandemic because, of course, I'm not. But I'm thankful for being alive, and I'm thankful for being able to take the best from the worst of the pandemic, because I feel like there was more worse than good, but still there was some good out of it. And being able to see that and not have lost anyone on it makes me appreciate life more and be thankful to God for the opportunity that I had of not losing anyone, if that makes sense. Or of the blessing, not opportunity, but the blessing of not losing anyone.
Yep, I definitely agree with you on that. As in, I think the pandemic has been a time of reflection for a lot of people as
Yeah.
well, thinking through about like, hey, is this kind of big thing can happen? Like, do I really like what I do? And have I given enough time to my loved ones? And this sort of stuff definitely comes to mind, even for me as well. Yeah. So in terms of the blog wise, do you have any new directions then? Do you get any new ideas about whatever you have done during the pandemic, because you're putting out, I reckon, a more different angle of content?
I mean, I was working more on my SEO. I wasn't trying to change, which might have been a mistake, but I didn't try to change my content based on the pandemic, just because to me it was like, I don't recommend people to travel right now. So I don't want to create, and that might have been selfish of myself from my part, but I just don't want to create content to travel safe, because I just don't feel it's the time to travel now. Of course, on my social media, I was constantly reminding people, if you're traveling, wear your masks and social distancing and wash your hands and do that. But on my blog post itself, I'm gonna be honest with you, I just didn't try to focus on, like, not even more nature wise, because at that time we didn't even know if traveling to nature was safe. So I just didn't feel that I was in a position of authority to tell people this is how you should be traveling now, because I just didn't know. And I just rather not telling someone, hey, go and travel this way, you're gonna be safe, and that person getting sick. So I just didn't switch my content based on the pandemic.
And so, what are your future plans then? Because obviously, I think one thing that I've seen a lot of bloggers do is that they started shifting from travel content to lifestyle content. And I think a lot of them started looking into more revenue sources, because suddenly they know that, when something like this happens, you get wiped out in terms of that stream, right? And are you
Yeah.
planning on new stuff?
I have always tried to do different projects. Like right now, I'm selling some of my photos on Etsy. I'm writing a book actually, and right now we're in the crowdfunding stage. So if you go to my link, Instagram. At Travel to Blank, you can see the link there to pre-buy my book. And in that book, I share my experiences in 10 different trips that I did and 10 different lessons that I learned on those trips. So, I'm not thinking much about my blog in the sense of trying to switch it more to lifestyle or something like that, because that's not me. Like, I like traveling, and I like to keep my personal life to me and my family, and then my travel to the world, because I want everyone to travel with me. So I don't see me switching to lifestyle, but I do want to share what I have learned through my travels, either through my lens, through my photos, or through my book. So I'm looking more into those type of streams to diversify my business, but not so much about the focus of my brand, because Travel to Blank is about traveling. It's about going out there and getting out of the comfort zone. So I don't know, maybe later on if I'm going to create a different brand for lifestyle, but I don't think so.
Well, yeah, life is always a mystery, especially when you're a traveler. You realize that let's just take things as they go, because things just change very fast and very quickly, right? All right, cool, man. Thanks, Jazmin, for coming on today. I think we had a very nice talk with you, especially regarding diversity and sustainability. I think that was really important for people to hear, and it's a very valuable topic to talk about as well.
Thank you so much. I highly appreciate it. And another thing that I always say is that before judging someone, just always remember that there's a language barrier. And sometimes what you're trying to say might not come out the way you meant it to come. And that's why we were talking about the language, the importance of speaking in their own language. It's because sometimes, and that have happened to me, I have been offensive to someone just because I didn't know how to say it in a different way. So part of traveling is understanding that there's different cultures, different customs, and different languages. So there's always a barrier, and part of your job is to be open-minded and try to perceive that message in the best way possible, and not get offended or insulted or feel that someone is out there to get you, but trying to be a little bit more open about it. And with that, I just want to say thank you so much for this invitation. I had a pleasure talking to you about diversity, about sustainability, about my business in general. For me, it has been a pleasure. I invite everyone in your community to reach out to me about asking about anything they want. They can find me in Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook as Travel to Blank, and on Twitter, in my personal Twitter, as Jazmin Harb. And I will be more than happy to connect with you and answer all of your questions about traveling, about business, about traveling with dogs, traveling solo, traveling with your husband, anything. I'm here for you. I owe myself to you. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jazmin.
Thank you for listening to Chat with Nomads. Please remember to subscribe and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. And be sure to share with your friends. Also, we'd love to know what topics you'd like to hear more about. To stay updated on the latest, join us on our mailing list at chatwithnomads.com. You can also find more travel and nomading tips at Nomads Unveiled. That's NOMADSUNVEILED.com. Start living your dreams today. We'll catch you in the next episode.